What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Real Talk number 13. Today, we're going to be talking about the nasty topic that is cancel culture. Now, to many, it probably won't be very surprising that I'm covering this topic, especially in light of everything that happened with Ed Piskor as well as C2E2. For those that are unaware of what C2E2 is, it is a very popular and large comic book convention in Chicago, where three of my fellow comic book creators were banned from. So what's crazy about cancel culture or canceling is that it can happen to anyone at any moment without any valid reason or proof. Someone can literally just toss out an allegation, tag a company, tag well-known people, people with a following, and run someone's name through the mud. Now, sadly, all the things that have led to cancel culture, which really it's existed for all of time. It's sadly a habitual thought process that has always existed. Now, some humans have always been okay with stepping on others or feeding them to the wolves to better their own position. I mean, this happens even at a young age, right? Kids tattling on other kids in situations where they're not even impacted themselves. This happens in work culture, in the corporate culture, for sure. There are people that are willing to throw you under the bus, make claims that you aren't doing your job properly or doing inappropriate things, just so that they can get fired and you can hope that person can hopefully get promoted, right? Make more money. This is nothing new. Snitch culture has always festered in America, in my opinion, for decades. It's essentially the inability to just mind your own business. And, well, of course, that's only gotten worse with the internet, but we'll get there. Um, but yeah, whether it's your job, someone's status, popularity, all of these things feed into why cancel culture exists. One of the best examples of it, I mean, it's politicians, right? They set a horrible example for people. I mean, look at, presidents. Look at, I mean, you've already seen it in the last year where a presidential candidate will just talk mad shit about another candidate, run their name through the mud, say that they're horrible for the country, that they're, a thief, they're this, they're that. And then suddenly, when that candidate drops out of the race, oh, I love this guy, because he is now promoting me. He is now backing me, and I'm going to consider him as VP. He'd be great for the country, right? It's all about them trying to do whatever they can to get more votes, right? To win, to make more money, to be more famous. Whatever reason they have for being president, they are not afraid of stepping on others and running their name through the mud to better their own position. One stupid little example I can even give just from working in the corporate world is, my previous position, I I got called into HR one day. Okay. And HR manager's like, well, there's been some complaints about your shoes. I sat there and I'm like, my shoes. Yeah, they don't really fit in with our, code of conduct or our handbook. I'm like, okay, um, what do you want me to do about it? Well, you need to wear different shoes. I'm like, well, yeah, I lifted up my crutches at the time and was like, well, I wear these shoes because I need to be able to slide into them, right? They were nice looking, like Converse shoes, khaki colored. Um, I'm like, well, if somebody wants to come to my house every morning and tie my damn shoes, sure, I'll wear other shoes, but otherwise, this is the only way I can get my shoes on and get to work. And then suddenly it wasn't an issue. They dropped it because, well, it would look pretty bad to go after somebody that at the time was, injured and on crutches. And then after that happened, the person that I found out that was trying to snitch on me or whatnot started doing it to other people for other reasons, right? To other women because their shirt was too low cut, or they're wearing open-toed shoes, you name it. But there was a pattern. That person was constantly targeting others that were in higher positions than them, and that if they were gone, it would give them an opening to be promoted, to make more money. Now, tying into the most relevant and recent situation or space, which is comic books, well, there is there's this desperation to remain relevant and to secure employment these days, with certain individuals, of course, journalists and such. Now, the reason being, it's not as lucrative as it used to be, right, to work for the big two and other big publishers. That's part of it. Now, the other big part of it is the internet, which again, I'll get to that. But this desperation has just ignited or exacerbated that snitch culture, right? To go after others that are in better positions than you or in competing positions so that you can secure your employment and make sure that you remain relevant. The biggest part of this, or the biggest problem, is that the management at these big publishers are the same way. They have the same ideology, the same lack of morals, and the same mob mentality, because all they care about is pushing their beliefs and their agenda onto the masses. So they're going to give a pat on the back to those that seem to fit in with their mission. So this encourages that behavior versus folks that mind their own business and just focus on their work. Now, there may be some rare cases where individuals are so talented and bring so much money to the company that they'll look the other way, but in many cases, that won't happen. So yeah, being an asshole can get you promoted, get you a pat on the head, and give you that dopamine hit that you need, unfortunately. So this leads into the question of, why has this become such a widespread and common phenomena in America or in general? The first reason is poor parenting. Now, I'm going to focus more so on America, obviously, because that's where I grew up. That's what I'm most familiar with, for the most part. So I think it's a mixture of a lack of parents, maybe a missing father figure, to actually, teach them properly. It's also American work culture and the stress from the lack of money. There's a lot of pressure, when you live in America to make money, and the work culture is not always great at companies. When it comes to working overtime, a ton of travel, and just having this immense pressure of having to maintain your job. And this, of course, does, again, it ties directly into those folks trying to secure their employment, though it's obviously the wrong way to do so. And then there's also folks that just have an obsession with money, right? There's people that will work just from dusk till dawn trying to make millions and millions of dollars. And even when they've made that money, they don't stop there. They will sacrifice time with their children to just amass a fortune. They're not able, for some reason, to take a step back and enjoy what they have and be somewhat modest. So I think all of those things, and also potentially a lack of religious influence, are why kids potentially could be raised to not mind their own business and to not have that moral compass to be like, hey, I shouldn't step on others in order to better my position. Instead, I should be working hard, honing my craft, etc. Now, the other large aspect to why this has become such a widespread issue is an addiction to attention and dopamine hits from social media. To me, I think sometimes this is due to a lack of success or achievements in certain individuals, and also jealousy towards others that are in better positions than them. And this is, an unfortunate, I guess, aspect of life, or one that's extremely unfortunate, is just, as the internet has become, such an amazing tool, but also a tool for destruction at times. People are so focused on just being recognized. Now, that could just be from, again, not having achievements or not having good relationships in their life, something healthy to focus on. But the internet provides this just massive, I guess, opportunity in a way to get attention, right? To say things, to do things, to get noticed. And in a lot of cases, it's due to, I mean, they're getting attention for things that are not good, right? We've seen these things on, videos on TikTok, YouTube of people, doing things that could kill themselves, that are extremely dangerous and just absurd, just to try to get the clicks, just to try to get the views. And then on a smaller scale, again, you have, folks that, again, they're willing to shine a bad light on others to get that same attention, that same dopamine, to make sure that they are relevant or they feel relevant. Now, the big reason why it's become such a widespread phenomena is the internet. When you growing up in the 80s, 90s, right? If you were to take yourself back to then, when there really wasn't internet, or it was, on such a minor scale where there was no Facebook and Twitter and things like that. If you wanted to cancel someone from employment, I mean, especially, let's say, talking about big publishers, you would have to go through a lot of effort. You would have to mail letters, you would have to make phone calls, which a lot of people aren't even willing to put that amount of effort into something. And back then, companies just, they didn't have as much of this culture of listening to such things, or even looking for, such letters or notes, I guess you could say. But now, people can literally, with the click of a button, just reach the masses. They can tag a company, they can tag well-known people. And yeah, sometimes it may fail, it may not get anywhere, but sometimes, like we've seen recently, it can get everywhere. It can cause people to lose their jobs and potentially lose their lives, their livelihood. And it's extremely sad and disheartening. Just the amount of damage that an allegation or a rumor can do. Now, don't get me wrong, if someone is doing something abhorrent or illegal, I'm not saying that shouldn't be released or out into the public. The problem is the reaction from the masses, you know, before any evidence or trial or legal process has went underway. That's the issue. People jumping the gun in many cases to also get those clicks, to get those dopamine hits, and essentially becoming part of the problem in some cases. And the internet also just exacerbates the mob mentality. Not only can you try to impact someone's livelihood directly, it allows you to find others with the same mentality to actually gang up together and affect others. It allows dog piles to happen on the internet. Those things were not, it wasn't very easy to accomplish such things, again, back when I was a kid and the internet wasn't really such a tool for these actions. The only time you would see that is, at school, or, oh, you have like there's a scorned boyfriend or girlfriend and they're talking mad shit on MySpace and it's reaching, some friends or, um, people from school. That was like the extent of it at that time. Part of me wishes life was still like that in terms of, being simple. And the other issue is the lack of employee protection and ultimately corporate greed. When you live in other countries, there are actually protections for employees to where they can't just get fired without reason or cause, where they have to have like a 2 month or 3 month window to be able to find another job, to make sure they don't lose their health insurance. Now, it's different if that person is stealing from the company, right, doing something illegal or whatnot, but there's at least that protection to make sure that your family is not put in a horrible situation. Here in America, I mean, literally a company can fire you for no reason. And then you not only lack an income, but you have to pay to retain your insurance and you have to pay not only the entire amount that the corporation was paying and your portion of it, you're paying that and then some. Because again, there's no protection for employees really. There's not even really a lot of protection for citizens, and that is it's extremely disheartening. And I've seen it happen to people in the corporate world, and just from my experience living overseas, I got to see some other countries that are doing certain aspects better. And again, this just comes down to greed with companies wanting to cut employees because suddenly their sales are down. Instead of finding ways to become more efficient, they have the avenue to take a shortcut and just cut wages, cut employees to save on overhead. And it's at the expense of ordinary Americans who have families to feed, who in America you have to have health insurance if you don't want to go into massive debt potentially and have your life ruined or go into bankruptcy. It's insanely scary. And these are things that are not taught at a young age, of course, to be prepared for all of this. So the I guess big question is, what is the fix? The first potential fix, and it's just part of it, is to vote out obvious corrupt politicians, which can be a challenge since it's nearly impossible to trust any of them. And a lot of the ones that seem very good at first end up being just as bad as the worst of them, or at least in comparison to the ones that have been exposed. But it's at least something that you can do that does not take much effort, right? Do some research, watch how they speak, see what topics they're covering, what type of laws they want to push for, vote accordingly. The second would be for people to push for laws that could change the legal process. Make sure it is not a pay to play situation. And this is where it's scary for the individual that may have a false allegation pointed towards them or an employee that has been, fired because of their own free speech, essentially. The only way you can fight to prove that you're right or fight to prove that you're innocent is to pay thousands and thousands of dollars just to do so. Potentially put yourself into massive debt, put an immense amount of stress on yourself just to try to, you know, prove that, the employer was in the wrong, try to recoup your costs. And you take it a step further, the other thing that needs to be fixed is shortening the legal process. The way it's set up, in my opinion, is so that the legal system and the lawyers can just benefit at an immense scale with just dragging out the process and taking all of these steps and doing all this paperwork, when in reality, a lot of the information is already there and readily available, but it takes so long to get it in front of a judge. And lawyers can purposely, delay things and all that to make sure they make more money. Now, I'm not saying all lawyers are like that, but I've definitely witnessed where that is the case. And so that's extremely scary. The fact that you have to, when someone's already in a really unfortunate situation, they then have to again possibly take out loans and just add extra stress to them and their families just to defend themselves. And that is a huge issue, is just how the legal system is set up. Um, but when we're talking about changing laws, I mean, look at our healthcare, right? Look at our government's appetite for foreign wars. In a lot of cases, it doesn't matter what the general public wants or what they push for. It's extremely hard to find politicians willing to stick their neck out to actually fight for the right thing, to fight for citizens. If they actually did give a shit, these employee protections that I mentioned would exist. There would be a way to ensure that, hospitals cannot charge insane an insane amount of money for a procedure to someone that doesn't have insurance and then turn around and charge a quarter of that or a tenth of that to someone that has insurance. Um, the fact that insurance companies even exist and the amount of money they can make and how there's potentially politicians are benefiting and making money from all of these things is just it's a major issue. So when you look at the fact that things are not changing on those or in those areas, it's extremely depressing because you think they're gonna work hard to make sure that there's laws to protect people from false allegations, to make sure that people that are pushing out false allegations are facing consequences. Because let's be real, the biggest fix is to make sure that the consequences are severe for folks that do push false allegations, and that those that are facing those false allegations have an avenue to protect themselves without having to go into debt, and they have some sort of protection or, again, some sort of representation, you know, from, you know, from the country, or, that the country represents them somehow, since we're paying, right, for this government to do what it does with our tax dollars. And then, I mean, at the family level, just making sure that you're teaching your children to be better than all of this. Make sure they don't get sucked into the mob mentality. To teach them to mind their own business. In cases that something you know when there isn't illegal things going on, or people aren't actually in harm's way. And I really think that, again, this is a growing problem in America. I've lived overseas in Eastern Europe, and I tell you what, it's much different there. People just keep to themselves. There's less small talk in the sense of they're not immediately starting conversations with, asking you what your political beliefs are, right? What party you vote for, things like that. They're just focused on themselves and their families, and there just isn't this mentality of, damaging others to better themselves. And I really hope that changes in America. It's the same, in Japan. People are just focused on themselves. They're minding their own business, and it's something that really needs to change here. And making sure that you instill that in your children. So it's a complicated topic. It's sad to see what it's done to people. It's sad to see how the internet has been used as a tool for destruction in many cases. And it's sad to see people just fall into this hole of following others, like, oh, they're doing it, now I could do it, and oh, look at how it helped them, I could do that. And it's like, man, people really need to wait until, you know, all the evidence or whatnot is out, and as corrupt and screwed up as the legal system is, but make sure that due process happens before you get involved or whatnot, because you don't want to contribute to hurting an innocent person, right? I mean, that's what's the scariest thing, right? So, and yeah, the other thing, I guess the one, it's weird to say a positive thing that has came from cancel culture, but it exposes hypocrites, right? It shows you who will conveniently be silent when certain people are canceled, but then when other people are canceled, they're really vocal. They really give a shit. And we saw this with C2E2. We've seen this with other comic book conventions where it's like, oh, well, someone I don't like was banned from a convention. Now, to be precise here, I'm not saying being banned from a convention is canceling. Canceling to me is when people go to extreme lengths to get folks fired from their jobs, when they go to the extreme to make sure that they're excluded from an entire community. Again, the extreme side of things. But on the smaller scale, not that I'm delegitimizing the issue with, getting banned from conventions and such, but back to the point, you know, with C2E2, a lot of people that say they're against cancel culture didn't speak out and say, hey, even though I'm not a fan of this person, this should not happen. This is not okay. And, everybody has the right to go to these conventions. They have every right to sell their product, etc. And they are silent until their friend gets canceled, and then it's suddenly an issue. More people need to stand up for others. More people need to speak out against canceling and instances where folks are being banned from public events for no good reason. That's the only way you can change it. That's the only way you can put pressure on these conventions, on these companies, to where it's like, hey, more and more people are speaking out against what you're doing to people, and it's going to impact your attendance. People are going to do the right thing and say, hey, I'm not going to go give them my money if they're doing this to people. So it is exposing some hypocrites. It is shining a light on some folks that are potentially benefiting from all of this or have selective give a shit syndrome. Now, of course, one of the biggest ways that you can combat cancel culture is to support indies, to fund artists and creators directly, because then you're not funding these corporations who have managers and executives that believe in canceling, that support those that cancel others, that are without a moral compass. You get to support the creator directly so that not only can they keep more of the money they make so that they can make more entertainment for you, but so that you can ensure that you are not contributing to companies that profit from cancellation or that support it. So I think it's extremely important that folks support indies on every level, support crowdfunding and folks that are just willing to really put themselves out there and go to every length possible to get their work out there. And the other thing is they can't be canceled. I mean, in reality, an indie can't be canceled. There's always an avenue to be able to sell your books and get your creative works out there. But with the big publishers, I mean, you could easily be trying to support a creator there, and then boom, they're out. And then you'll never even see another book with their name on it. So, with people just promoting independence, the idea of being independence, that can give those folks that were unjustly canceled an avenue to continue to provide their art and their entertainment to folks, which is what's most important. So it's extremely important for creators, but it's also extremely important for consumers and fans. You want to continue to consume and have access to amazing products from your favorite creators. You got to back them up, and you need to support those avenues such as crowdfunding that gives people the ability to get their work out there, to follow their passion. So I appreciate you guys watching. It's not a fun topic. It's something I don't really talk about much. I mean, of course, with the stuff with C2E2, I wanted to get that information out there, make sure people were aware of what was going on, because I mean, again, that could happen to any of us indie comic and novel creators, and we really need to stand up and support folks that are being unjustly banned or canceled. And yeah, I hope over time that this culture changes and that we can just be better than this. But the way that things are going and the way you see kids being raised, you see the indoctrination in colleges, in high schools, in middle schools, hell, even kindergartens, the stuff that they're pushing and the spread of liberalism in America. And when I say liberalism, I'm talking the extreme concepts of liberalism and how it's being exported to countries. There are countries that didn't have this mentality, that really treasured their traditions and their culture, slowly just eroding because we're exporting, things like cancel culture and certain ideologies that, it's really damaging to families and to kids. And like, we've really got to do what we can to stop the spread of that within our own country, but also make sure it's not being exported, and try to appreciate the countries that are staying true to their traditions, to their cultures, and see that as an example to work towards. So real quick, and speaking about supporting indies, if you could please go to Indiegogo.com and check out Vigilantes Creed. I have 2 novels and a mini comic about a gargoyle and a team of vigilantes fighting terrorism and mind control in Detroit. I definitely do tackle cancel culture a bit, media manipulation, brainwashing, all that stuff in my novels. So I highly recommend folks check it out if you're fans of Alan Moore's work, H.P. Lovecraft, etc. This would definitely be up your alley. So again, there are individual novels. There's a book 1 and a book 2 with some phenomenal art from independent creators. So again, support indies. There's also a duology version with both novels combined, 500 pages of prose. And then I have 3 variations of a mini comic, which introduces all the major and supporting characters so that it's a more immersive reading experience. And you just get more of that beautiful art, something that's missing when it comes to a lot of novels. So please go to Indiegogo.com and back it. Everything ships out within 2 business days. And again, the link is down below. And don't just support me, support other comic book creators, indies, other indie novelists, indie music creators, all of that. And let's do what we can to combat cancel culture. Thank you guys, and God bless.